I tried to come up with something clever to say about fairies in this intro, and all I came up with was "Fairy on my wayward son," and I don't know. I don't feel like it quite works. Hello, folks. Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU, here for another Legacy video, and today Steve has asked me to play with a blue-black fairies deck list. But this was one of those times where the donor sent me a list and was like, "You're gonna need to adjust this. I don't really know quite what I'm doing." So I thought it would be neat to kind of capture my process of changing this here. So I haven't adjusted the deck list yet, and I'm going to take a first look at it and kind of give you my thoughts. So this is what Steve originally sent me, and the idea is clear, right? Like, we want to be a fairy deck list, and we want to have some ability to lean into the fact that, like, being a fairy creature matters, and like, we do have lords and some fairies that synergize well with each other. And I think that this deck is going to do a reasonable job at accomplishing that, but I think a lot of the cards in the deck don't make the cut for legacy power level. Faerie Seer as a 1/1 in an Orcish Bowmaster's world is pretty rough. Fairy Mastermind in an okay, I don't need to say it again, right? X1 fairies are in a bad place. And some of the other creatures that are in this deck list that could survive Orcish Bowmasters maybe don't quite fit the bar of playability. And Quickling, a beloved card that I used to play with, is neat, but I don't know that we're going to have the mana to just replay these creatures. And the 2/2 flying flash creature is maybe not as good as it used to be a long time ago. While some of these cards are going to be a little slow, they'll still slap in the right situation. But when I look at things like this, you know, how much does that not be countered matter? The cost reduction, I don't think, is going to be super, super relevant here, unless we're drawing a bunch of extra cards and then vomiting a bunch of extra fairies into play. I think this is not going to be worth a card. This isn't, an Allosaurus Shepherd that can just be played out on turn one and your stuff's uncounterable for the rest of the game. Now, it's real neat for letting you win a counter war or something like that, but I think we are going to have to rebuild our creature base a little bit. One, in respect of Orcish Bowmasters, and two, to make sure that the average card that we are playing is of legacy power level. Also, we might have to get out the magic marker and erase Orc and turn Orcish Bowmasters into a fairy. I think if we want to play a blue-black flash deck, that is something that might end up happening. And we're going to have to rebuild our mana base here. Well, we want to be using true dual lands as a starting point for this. If we want to keep the back to basics in the sideboard, we probably won't actually run all that many duels. So now, through the magic of editing, we'll see what I end up coming up with to change this. So in doing some research, I found that there's probably two directions that I can take the deck list. The first is to be a blue-black flash deck list, and in that case, the Cunning Knight Bonder Knight Binder is fine to reduce costs on things like opposition agents and Orcish Bowmasters in addition to the fairies, or I can try to stay as a creature type deck, but I might have to play a few kind of mediocre creatures to round things out. And given that this was submitted to me as a fairies deck list, I'm going to stay in that vein. And this is what I'm going to be playing today. The one-drop options for fairies aren't great. They just aren't. And a lot of times, fairy decks end up supplementing with rogue creatures to help out and kind of answer that problem. If I want Sprite here to kind of curve out properly, I probably need to just begrudgingly play Faerie Seer. But to compensate for that, I'm going to go up to the 4th Scion of Oona, as well as playing one Tegwyll, Duke of Splendor, as another Lord. I've changed the mana base. If we're going to go heavy on fairies, like, let's go all the way here. And this means that we're going to get rid of the back to basics sideboard plan. It's a way to steal some games, but I'm hoping that we play reasonable Magic and I don't need to just steal games. I think if you don't want to play some of the worst creatures in this deck list, you can start looking at playing Dazes, Spell Pierces, and spells of that general nature. I'm going to opt not to do that. And instead, I'm trying to use some of these slots for some removal and trying to keep creature density relatively high. We're at 26 creatures right now, which is pretty high by Legacy standards. And I've pulled Brainstorm from the deck, which is blasphemy, I know. And I've just replaced it with Lorien Revealed. I think if I am spending on mana on cantrips, that I'm using that to get lands, and I think just having the thing that always has me hit my next land drop is preferable. And one thing that I found lacking in this deck is that it does not have an endgame card advantage engine of any kind. You know, there's not Up the Beanstalk here, there's not Planeswalkers here, or anything like that. So for those games that go really long, this is a powerful endgame top deck. Not that Brainstorm wouldn't be strong in the endgame, but this allows me to just kind of keep using my mana base. Let me rephrase that. I think this allows me to kind of like be safest when it comes to utilizing my mana base. For comparison, a 60 card D&T deck list will run around 24 or 23 lands, and we're trying to be on 20 here. So making sure that my cantrips just always hit those land drops, I think matters. And I opted away from Daze in this deck list because I do want to, in theory, curve out 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop every game and minimize the amount of time that my X1 creatures are X1 creatures. Vendilion Click probably shouldn't be in the deck, but I'm a boomer, so we'll forgive it. Otherwise, the sideboard hasn't changed too much, except I'm going to play a Faerie instead of Leyline of the Void. Yeah, so with that being said, if you like what you see today and you need to buy any cards, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save a little bit on your order. And let's battle. All right, here we go. I have a reasonable opening hand. I'm going to have some decisions to make on turn 2 regarding which one of these things I want to do. Now we get to play the game of fair or unfair Polluted Delta. Let's assume fair and try to shove a Bitterblossom. You're lucky. You might get a glimpse of the cat hanging out in the background. Or the cat might get on my green screen and things get weird. Well, I picked wrong. That's an Atraxa. You want to come up here, Mr. Popo? That is the Reanimate, unfortunately. We are punished for not leaving up the Sprite. Is that the Surveil land? That is the Surveil land. So this is cute in a Reanimator shell, because you can do something like brainstorm a creature to the top of your deck, and then surveil it into the graveyard, and you can just do that off like a fetch land. Alright, so am I going to beat this Atraxa through Grief? Probably not, because I can just like take my Dismember. I can chump block this Atraxa forever. I think I'm low enough percentage to win this game that I'm just going to scoop it up here. And this is where this pile O counter spells and disruption comes in. Maybe Force of Negation as well. I'll probably start by pulling cards that force me to tap out. You sorcery speed, your sorcery speed. I think I'll keep in like one Dismember in respect of things like Grief or a Reanimated Fairy on my end. Yeah, this is fine. Opponent kept their 7. Just plays land go. We're fine with that. So I have pretty good differing types of interaction here. And I'm not just dead to something sneaking through because I have Brazen Borrower to bounce. I don't think I need basics this game. So we'll just fetch twice and drop the Fairy Mastermind end of turn. Gives my opponent to cast something like an Entomb while I am tapped out. That's fine, I'll let you do that. And it's in play. So now we've got Sprite, which I hope to use in the next turn cycle. I don't have enough mana for Brazen Borrower right now. For sure. Yeah, there's the Surveil land. That's a wasteland. That was not something I was expecting from this deck. Oh, that's in fact incredibly awkward for me. Is that awkward enough that I'm playing a Sprite end of turn? Might be. Let's try not to. Yep. So, things are shaking out in a bit of an awkward way here. I have a clock in play technically, but every time my opponent passes and they're making land drops and I'm not, I am falling behind. Like, we're discarding this turn. Probably just a Brazen Borrower. You can make an argument that I'm supposed to discard a Sprite because it has less power. Seems like my opponent is content to just wait me out here. I hate this guy. I need to counter that. I can't fight back over this, unfortunately. Not on my turn. And now we'll dump a Sleep-Cursed Fairy into play. And unfortunately, I'm not going to have the mana to untap it. And it's kind of slow. That happens. I have Faerie to disrupt that. Archon's scary. So reanimate. I'm going to get rid of Archon and Bowmasters in response. Yeah. It's going to give me a Fairy trigger. Man, it's really awkward if my opponent plays an Orcish Bowmasters in response to this trigger, huh? God damn it. Fucking force of negation. Yeah. That is not a land. So we won the fight we were trying to win, but we lost a different fight. Hey, that's not bad. This can be done at instant speed. I'm going to hold up Sprite for my opponent's turn. And then, like, end of turn, I can consider bouncing this token with a Brazen Borrower if I don't have anything else to counter. You can have that. Hardcast Grief. Okay. I guess I'm going to Petty Theft this token in response. And then this Brazen Borrower hangs out in exile instead of getting taken. It is, unfortunately, another X1 creature. But I don't currently have a Lord or the ability to play one, even if I drew it. Come on, deck. That's not what we needed. I take 4 here. Then I will funnel my mana into untapping this end of turn. So that actually is a functional card for my own turn. Oh, just like that, huh? No. You do not get that. Let's untap. I guess I technically have the better clock right now, right? Because I just get the first attack here. I have my opponent on a 3-turn clock. They have me on a 3-turn clock. I might end up just Brazen Borrowing Grief and just using that as a tempo play. Do I do it now before my opponent can untap and Force of Will? I don't think so. I want to give them the chance to play something pre-combat. Alright, had to go check on the cats. Let's bounce the Grief. There is a Daze. And that gets to return the Surveil land. These lands are sweet. This is a land. Fetching with it is very awkward, though. Like, I am in relative danger. Do I just Force of Negation this? I think I just Force of Negation this. I don't know, I can just leave up hard casting this and not play end of turn click. I might still end up pitch casting Force of Negation because my opponent has shown me Daze. Alright, we got that one. Felt scarier than I expected. More mid-range stuff here than I thought. Probably means Dismember is good. I can also be more cognizant about my land fetching now that I know about Wasteland. Let's get the click out. And this is interesting. It like lowers my clock by a reasonable amount some amount of the time. I think the Shroud is good. No land, no good. Have lands is pretty reasonable. I think I don't get to pitch cast a Force of Negation with this hand. I also am going to have a very relevant decision on turn 1 about which one of these things I'm doing. Sleep Cursed Fairy really wants you to play it out on turn 1 whenever possible. But I can just get got by something like Entomb into Reanimate immediately if I do that. I think I am just going to take the risk. My hand is kind of medium to start with. And I think I am eventually going to need this 3/3 body. Sure. Alright, I am getting griefed. See if my opponent has a Reanimate follow-up. They do, but it's kind of worth pointing out here that they have done a gajillion D damage to themselves. And their clock is not really all that much better than mine once this thing starts going. Now, if they can follow up with another creature afterwards, like, cool, good on them. But if they can't, like, we're just both attacking for 3. And I am going to drop Flusterstorm to activate this. I think it's necessary. Not punished for doing so. So we're going? I think we're going, and I'm not holding up double Fluster. Yeah. So now I am ahead in terms of the clock. My opponent's at 11, I'm at 16. Even after they take their attack, I'm at 13. So I'm ahead. And that can change very quickly. My opponent knows that they have Fluster to play around. But I can attack with this and then untap it to block with it. So I have some agency here. That is happening. But I'm not maxed punished. Ooh. I'm certainly attacking for 3. And then I think I am probably full price dismembering Grief. I think that's the plan. This leaves 1 Fluster up for my turn still, which should be enough to counter a single Reanimate spell, at least hopefully. My opponent's also at 8, so Reanimating Archon isn't a thing anymore. Put target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its mana value. Yep. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists. And they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out. All right, we are probably playing against Blue Dredge here. Is this fine? Turn 1 land pass, cycle, Lorien revealed, get second land, hold up this, slash this, slash this. This is like fine. It's a lot of damage in the air. I'm going to try to win game 1 via damage. I wonder if my opponent plays a Surveil land. Oh, it's Faithless Looting. Double Troll. Fuck. This is not the slow dredge that I was expecting. So my keep is much worse now that my opponent is on, like... Yep. Is on a new build. So we are gonna have to put the pedal to the metal. I don't need lands right now. I'd kind of like to find a counter spell. Oh, so Otherworldly Gaze is still in here too. Okay. That was no dredge? Okay. Fuck, 3 Narcomoebas? What the fuck is this? Tuscana the Rage Mother. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with base power and toughness 2. Whenever a creature you control with base power and toughness 2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. My opponent has requested to do the thing, and I will honor their request. So, this allows my opponent to draw 9 cards, which they can do as a combination of draws and dredges. These 2/2 creatures now have haste. A good day to pie. That's a good Cabal Therapy name. They rumble in, and we see some triggers. We're gonna have to take a block to absorb some damage here, I think. So that is a literal turn 2 60 fucking points of damage. Oh. Let's see what we can do about this. Faeries are great. I probably want some number of Flusterstorms and Force of Negations. Thoughtseize is probably playable. Dismember is not great. Tap Out Lord is not great. Bitterblossom is terribly slow and taps me out. Brazen Borrowers are probably mid. Let's try something that looks like this. This is fine. I mean, that's probably me underselling it. This is quite good. Like, I have a counterspell. I have a piece of graveyard disruption. There's a lot to like about this hand. Let's try to poke a hole over there. That is a very consistent hand, unfortunately. Bit of a shame this isn't a surgical in this exact instance. Guess I am taking out a careful study. My hand is going to be quite weak here. I mean, my opponent played the worst one of these first. I still think I have to Force of Negation it, unfortunately. I think I just have to stop my opponent for this extra turn cycle and hope to delay things. Like, it's much better to hit the Faithless Looting since it can come back later. But I don't really have that luxury. Alright. That's double Troll in there. I've got a Fairy to mess with that. I don't want to mess with it until I have Force of Negation available. Let's attempt to junk both Trolls, and that way if my opponent responds with something like a Brainstorm, I'm just okay. Sure. Otherworldly Gaze? Yep. We will be saying no to that. Yeah, it's just not worth risking it, even though it's not guaranteed to put a Dredger in. Okay, this is the portion of the game that we are happy to be in, where, and I will just play this out. I have Mana Sinks available, where my opponent has gotten to the point of just hard casting, air quotes, bad creatures. Things can get weird a little bit later on with Bridge from Below's being discarded and blockers and whatnot. I think I'm just untapping this twice and then trying to save this for another turn cycle. End it. So often, games versus Dredge just get wild. We're going to trade little pecks of damage back and forth. Sort of awkwardly, if I had done this as a land last turn, I could hard cast a Force rather than pitch cast a Force. Say la vie. Sure. It's the Faithless Looting, which I am just going to stop. Hello, Popo. Do you want to see outside? Open the window, bud. Alright. My opponent did not get got by Sleep Cursed Fairy. We got a Legacy Power level card for realsies in my hand. I joke, but if this ends up like finding a Lord or something like that, this can be pretty key. A Fairy. A Fairy is great. I think Lorien Revealed is a little slow right now. That is happening. Now, these are not initially dredges. Let's just preemptively pop out this graveyard. Okay, so there's 3 Bridge from Below's in graveyard, awkwardly. Killer Among Us. Good name. This is Dread returning the Ox. This is potentially very powerful. Ooh. Cabal Therapy themselves get a bunch of creatures. Dread returned this. Fuck, this got scary so fast. Yeah, that's all 4 bridges. So if they Dread return, what, they attack me for 8? Oh, they're going for the Ox. They're going deeper. This allows them to discard the Dredgers. That's a Narcomoeba. So now that they have 2 more creatures, they just like sack to Dread Return. That's a motherfucking anger. Goddamn. Okay. Now this build is so much faster than what they normally play with. I can untap this. Soak this up. What is this? 8, 12. I go to 1. That doesn't feel great. I don't know how I win from here. Oh, also, aren't I drawing Faerie? Yeah, this doesn't do it. Well, that was neat. GG's. Okay. Gotten paired against a fan of the channel, also playing a creature deck of some kind. Faerie, Elf. Elf into Blind Pithing Needle. So this is like an elf deck with Urza's Saga? From the look of things here. Wasteland was just needled. So I can fetch the duel without worrying. Oh, I see. That makes more sense. So my opponent is unlikely to draw cards, right? Meaning that I should probably just tap out for Bitterblossom. It's less short-term damage, but more long-term damage. We'll miss having back to basics for this matchup specifically. And I think I'm going to need a Lord if I am going to aggro my opponent out in an appropriate timeline. Or I can just like YOLO play second Bitterblossom. I guess that also plays really well towards me drawing a Lord a little bit later on. Now notably, this is not on like Giant for Primeval Titan. Intentionally for 1. Almost whatever that is will get eaten by Dismember, yeah. So the question becomes, do I do this right now while I have the 1 mana available? Or do I wait? I think I'm going to do it now. I'm going to end this game at a relatively low life total. If I win, I think it's fine. But I currently have a use for all of my mana, right? I want to untap this, go to combat, crash in for 4. Opponent's at 16. End of turn, I flash this in. And then I'm attacking for what, 5, 6, 7, 8? I have my opponent on a theoretical 2-turn clock. It's getting scary over there. My opponent might have green cards stuck in their hand. Otherwise, my opponent has some very big Eldrazi that are about a turn away from massacring me. Oh shit. That's so important. Holy cow, that's good. Send them. 8. Can Force of Will get me through this turn? Ooh. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this one can be countered. I'm going to go ahead and just fire this off now before my opponent draws their cards. It does shuffle the Kozilek back in, which is, you know, a thing. I'm hoping that doesn't matter. Actually, I would want them to redraw the Kozilek, right? Because it would just be bad next turn. That resolves. Can name my Fairy Mastermind, I guess. Or Sleeper's Fairy, sure. Okay. Ooh, they found Ulamog. I'll pay the blood price at my upkeep. Put this on Fairy. Go to combat. Send on in. It's not quite lethal. My opponent is at 2. I'll pass turn. If something I can't beat goes on the stack, I can draw 1 card to attempt to hit another Force of Will and have this blue card to pitch to it. Ooh. Uh-oh. That one can't be countered. Not dead to it, though. Very oddly, I am not dead to Emrakul, because my opponent did not use Ulamog to make me sacrifice here. So I think I'm just going to cast this and mostly sacrifice lands from here and give up lucking into exactly Force of Will. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm just going to go 5, 6. And I'll just straight up block with a token. This feels like the who wins in a fight 1 Emrakul or 15 squirrels scenario. Don't you dare Karakas me. Damn it. I was so close. I was so close. Note that I can survive 1 more Emrakul attack, but now my opponent just has this on a loop. Damn. What was the next card? It was a Sprite. We can almost counter an Emrakul with that. Other than the fact that it's, you know, uncounterable. So we're not going to be that great, or not going to be that different in terms of post-board plans. Like, the plan is still just murder my opponent. The good news is they're probably going to keep in Pithing Needles for wastelands that I don't actually have. Bad news is that a bunch of my cards aren't great. I still think I'm going to keep Dismembers for Elvish Reclaimers. I want this Thoughtseize in here. And then I can think about Flusters and Force of Negation. Both are awkward in different ways. Like, Fluster eventually just gets ignored by the big mana of the deck, but can stop some early crop rotations. Whereas Force of Negation is awkward if my opponent just casts something like a crop rotation at my end step. Let's go down like an expensive card for a Thoughtseize and try not to board more counter spells. Are these legendary? Oh, these are legendary. Is this fine? Like, do I just keep one of these, intending to pitch the other to Force of Will, and try to curve this into this, assuming I hit a land drop in 2 draws? I'm not in love with it, but I think it's happening. You can have Once Upon a Time. It does find the post. Sure? No. No. That is illegal. I'm not going to let my opponent cheat on mana on that. This does have flash. Sort of awkwardly, this isn't quite the mana source that I need it to be right now. So let's just flash in and get going. That's great. I think I am into draw step click on my opponent's turn. And then I will follow up with the Scion of Oona. First time Vendilion click has been cast since like 2016. See how it feels. Oh ho ho! Summoning Trap. Excuse me? I'm not planning on countering my opponent's stuff, but this is a horrifying card. Rex Sage doesn't matter. My opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total mana over a couple of land drops. I think I just take the Elvish Reclaimer and give them a redraw on that. I'll get rid of this stop. Yep. Alright, cool. So with 2 of those, I will just immediately Island Cycle 1, so that I get closer to hard casting the other. And then I'm just going to go ahead and bash in. This is 7 damage here. I'm just outside of range of lethal. Ooh, that is unfortunately for me a Glacial Chasm. This is going to keep my opponent alive for a little while. They lose a land to make that happen, though. So they can keep this around for a few turns. See how strong it is. Now, this costs 2 life, and note that this is life loss, and this prevents damage. So I can still bleed my opponent out by just playing Faeries. This is not scary right now. These 2 lands don't produce mana. I forgot to untap that. Not that that's the most notable thing in the world right now, but Dismember's always going on bottom. What is Summoning Trap trade off? If a creature spell you cast was countered. So I could still use this to counter a non-creature spell. But my opponent mostly has creatures right now. I think I'm going to bottom that. Especially since drawing a land just gets me a draw 3, and it only takes 2 fairies to kill my opponent, assuming that this does stay in play. Alright, cool. We put up the W there. Summoning Trap. Summoning Trap makes some of the Force of Will, Force of Negation stuff scarier. I think I'm happy with just boarding the Thoughtseize. This is an awkward one that I think I keep. I have a counter spell available and a turn 2 discard spell. It's not perfect, but I think this is enough relevant interaction that I just take it. And despite how slow this is, I think I'm just gonna try to punch a hole here. I find a relevant 1-drop. I'm really happy about, because then next turn I Thought Seize, and turn 3 I get a creature. Ah, they got another one. Such is life. Ooh. Then I guess I do this and cycle afterwards. Okay. Well, we've taken the gas. I am just going to island cycle now. And we'll see if I end up clocking my opponent quickly enough. Like, they get to get big mana. Yep. And this can find an Eye of Ugin if the game goes on long enough that is a real concern. Goes on Faerie, obviously. I'll pass the turn, play this at end step, untap this once on my turn, and start crashing in. That is happening. Let's see what map finds. My opponent could get something temporary, like a Glimmer Post, and then rotate it away. They're getting a Cloud Post. And we'll play our Lord. Ooh. Not the biggest fan of the 6-land situation over here. I think I'm about 2 turns away from death if I can't interact with my opponent. Now I could top deck something like a Force of Will and have the ability to hardcast it. That sure smells like a Primeval Titan that's gonna beat me. Like, this can get an Eye of Ugin and another Cloud Post, or Cloud Post adjacent land. Yup. Not Cavern on Giant. Or no, that was off of Green Sun. JK, never mind. Okay. Is there any out for me? 1 turn too late. I needed to be 1 card deeper, so I can attack for 5, put my opponent to 10. But then this stuff obliterates me. I am comfortable conceding there. We narrowly lose that one. Well, the Shroud squad is here in full force, but I think with 4 3-drops and 2 lands, I'm just better off mulliganing. I am immediately proven wrong. Well, for 5, this isn't bad. We're going to pitch a Force and Delta? Mathematically, it might be pitch Faerie Seer and just do this on Faerie. And then I always have my 3 lands to play my more expensive spells. My second turn cycle is a little awkward if I keep the 3rd land. Ooh. We maybe have some level of spice on the other side of the field. Well, this is Flash. I can do this later. So let's just do this and pass the turn. That's a really good draw for me. And then on turn 3, I can play one of these and untap this once. I really don't want to see a Teferi. Stopping all my flash on my flash cards is a killjoy. A Life from the Loam instead. Sure. Oh, let's flash in a Faerie. Ooh, Faerie Mastermind. I am in for that. I think I'm going to grab a basic island. Just in respect of a wasteland that can come a little bit later. Play this. Trigger. Bash in for the 2. We're pretty unlikely to see sweepers like Supreme Verdict from a Delighted Halfling deck. I am not going to say impossible. There's a Dredge. Opponent is playing a poser Faerie deck, not a real Faerie deck. TM. I think I just respond to that and get my 1 life here. Very nice. Sure. It is another Swords, unfortunately. And another Life from the Loam. Got it. Bitterblossom. Alright. I'll do it. I missed 3 points of damage this turn by not funneling my mana into untapping this, but cards like Bitterblossom accrue value over time, so you want them out as soon in a game as possible. What's coming now? And how many colors is this deck? Timeless Dragon. That's a big booty. That's pretty annoying. Bitterblossom plus this is a combo, though. And my opponent burned 2 copies of Swords to Plowshares already. My opponent presumably has some real big haymakers over there, like the One Ring or Stop it. He's just a little guy. Or is she just a little girl? She's just a little girl. You know, it just doesn't quite have the same ring to it. Let's get our life loss machine in play. So I lose a life. You lose a life. It's a pretty weak card at this stage of the game, but still worth a point of damage. Nope, 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 nope. Nope. Okay. Weird sequencing with mana. Yeah, you can Life from the Loam. Okay. My opponent might have a bunch of counterspells that just got stuck in hand and could never do anything. Well, that's unfortunate. Just gonna hold that in hand as a bluff. I don't think I am willing to expose creatures in combat yet to lose one. Like, losing this right now is a pretty big blow. Just kind of comfortable with the pace this game is going at. I might be willing to attack next turn. Oh, my opponent just throws in the towel. It's pretty possible that if I just, like, attacked on my previous turn, I 2-turn my opponent, right? Like, maybe they block this the first time. It's 3 either way. Just they block one of the things that does 3 points of damage, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage, putting them to 4. And then I probably kill them the other turn. I don't know that I have to take the risk. Now, in post-sideboard games where it's more likely that I could see Supreme Verdict and Terminus, maybe that's different. Use Fluster are things I'm thinking about. Dismember won't kill an Uro. It will kill a Timeless Dragon. I have a bunch of Brazen Borrowers to bounce things like Timeless Dragon. I haven't technically seen the Uro yet. I kind of just want to play as many creatures as possible. What I'm currently thinking about doing is trimming a good number of these cards and just straight up bringing these in as 2/2 flying fairies and trying to overwhelm my opponent's removal. I think I'm going to do that. Now I don't ever 2-for-1 myself, which is a thing I don't really want to do. And then, not like the biggest Dismember fan here. Maybe I split Dismembers and Flusters. This is fine. Not quite as free as my counterspell-proof hand last time. Also, did I win on a mold of 5 there? I think I did. Let's start on basics in respect of Wasteland. I guess Faerie also incidentally hits Life from the Loam. So that's cool. Sure. Alright, it's just setup time. More land. I think this just gets me a basic island right now. I think I'll hold up Faerie Mastermind rather than hold up this plus this turn. Alright. Why did I not respond with Faerie Mastermind? Whoops. And this is exactly their second card, so don't get to get them on this one. We'll pretend like I had some smart guy reason like playing around removal. But I definitely didn't. I have one basic swamp in the deck, which I am fine getting. Send this in. And then I think I'm going to fetch now. And I play Sleep Cursed Fae, and I've got 2 mana up to mess with a counter on these. My opponent notably does not have white mana yet. So some of the sweeper stuff is offline in the short to medium term. Teferi happens. That's going to be a dead Teferi, though. That's fine. That's fine. I can just untap this once and then kill Teferi. Like so. Brazen Borrower is cool as well. And Teferi. And I am just going to hold up these assorted spells. We actually might see Lorien Reveal played as intended. I think since I'm so scared of a sweeper right now, I just double untap this and don't commit more bodies to the board. I don't want to just lose 3 or 4 bodies to a single sweeper if possible. That's fine. I'm going to bounce that. I'm not going to kill that. Cavern of Souls. Not bad. Put it on Faerie. Wrong card. This one, Petty Theft, Target Endurance, Attempt Bounce, Passion for 6. This is a lot of damage, and even if my opponent replays the Endurance, I can attack for a lot of damage. No Mystic Sanctuary there. Dress Down would be my opponent's first card for turn, so Faerie Mastermind doesn't do anything. It does remove the ward from these creatures, though, which is obviously relevant. Super relevant, in fact. That's a big swing. Yeah, and this doesn't have an ability right now. Got Mystic Sanctuary nonsense to do? No. Alright, they're just going to cast the Endurance right now. Okay. Well, let's let this Dress Down go. I think I'm just playing this now. I will put it in play. I will attack through an Endurance eventually. A Sprite. Playing this into this counters a lot of things like Teferi. But I think this is a really good draw 3 opportunity. I don't know, maybe I just let it go a turn. I think I'm going to play my creatures first. And then do the Lorien Revealed. Okay. I will bite. This doesn't work out quite like I wanted it to. But okay. I now will counter the swords and let them have the Uro. And then I will just ferry the Uro out of graveyard. I do get a card here. Another cavern isn't really what I'm looking for. A lord would be great, so I can start attacking. Oh, we're going deeper. Red scares me. Red potentially represents 4th Aerlingas. Dual shot. Alright. Thanks, Orcish Bowmasters. Are you attacking? Nope. End of turn. Let's get rid of Uro, and I don't want dual shot happening again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still 1, maybe 2 extra. I think I play this on Faerie now, and then I can leave open 2 mana like this. I'm not going to complain about using my draw 3 to draw another draw 3. But this body does not line up well versus Endurance, obviously. And losing multiple creatures to the Twin Shot or whatever that was called is certainly rough. Yeah. That's real good. You've got a 4/4. I'm totally fine as long as I can get this Endurance out of the way. Oof. Well, it's good the first time. Let's see if it's good the second time. Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower is one of the things that I want to draw. I think I need more power in play before I can do it. I think I'm just holding up Scion of Oona and Brazen Borrower right now. Then next turn, I hope to be able to bounce a relevant card. Then kill the Minskin Boo? Yes. Can I beat a 7/7? I think I have to hope that I do. End of turn. I'm going to increase the amount of power on my board. Now my stuff is shrouded. So green mana is available. So it's 4 mana to get this attacking. It's 2 mana for Brazen Borrower. And then I still have 2 more for Sprite, right? 4, 2, 2. I do have enough mana for this to work. Let's fetch now. I guess I'd Petty Theft first. Alright, get Endurance out of the way. Now, I will untap. My opponent casts Endurance. This is an uncounterable counter to that Endurance. I activate this one more time. I have Shroud. I'm not expecting a blocker. I think I'm going to attack for exactly the correct numbers. I think the margins on this game are pretty tight, since there is a 7-power creature in play. And I'm going to drop one more creature and hope that my opponent doesn't board wipe me. I think I just need every point of power in play here, because this pretty much always 2-turn clocks me. All right. What just happened? Oh, they prismatic ending Scion of Oona for not an appropriate amount to actually get rid of it. I guess they thought it was a CMC 2 card. It's a CMC 3 card. So if they use one more color, they remove this. And what, I have 3, 4, 5, plus I can untap this. I've still got lethal, so they would need another removal spell in their 2 cards beyond that. Despite having a reasonable mix of lands and spells, I don't really like this hand. This is fine. I think I will be pitching Dismember here. And just keep rock solid, undisruptible mana under normal circumstances, and an emergency exit button to whatever my opponent does. Sure. I care about a Chalice? I don't think I care about a Chalice, right? I only have like 8 1-drops. Yeah. That resolves. If I draw 1-drops, I will pitch them to these cards and be perfectly fine with that. Okay. This is not unexpected. Blood Moon. You know what? This is going to come as a shock to you, but resolves. Undisruptible mana. Basic lands are good. You heard it here first. My Fairy Mastermind, unfortunately, is pretty mid right now. That doesn't do anything right now. Cavern of Souls is not on. I can just force a will the next 2 creatures my opponent plays and keep that from being relevant. Resolves. Yeah, we'll just play a creature end of turn. Yeah, that's good force of will fodder. Move that over there. And in for 2. We're going to set a draw step stop here. And click my opponent. Do I let them keep Shatter Skull Smashing and trade Shatter Skull Smashing and Spirit Guide for Force of Negation and Sleep Cursed Fairy? I think so. I think that's better than not knowing what's in their hand. Yep. Although, if I had made them draw, it would have triggered Fairy Mastermind. I didn't consider that. Ooh. 5? Brings you to 9. I now have Force of Will for the next thing you play. And a 2-turn clock with blockers. This is not a threatening card. But this game is so close to over, and I know my opponent's other 2 cards in hand are just 2 Blood Moons, that I'm just going to take it. And they are dead. Just out of curiosity, if I would have gone 1 more card deeper, I would have ended up with 1 extra land. This is what Hydroblasts are for. And that game was a great clinic in choosing what spells you actually counter, because many of the spells just did not matter to me. And if I had blown counter spells earlier on, that Goblin Rabblemaster could have been much more threatening. Same with the Shatter Skull Smashing. I'll probably force some negation. My sprites are a little slow here. My dismembers are a little, or sorry, not my dismembers, my Bitterblossoms are a little slow. Faerie Seer is not the best. If I want to respect Sprite, keep them. If I want to respect Chalice, I maybe get rid of them. Respecting Chalice is probably good. I think I'm going to keep these, though. Is this the plan? This feels like the plan. Now, note that ignoring Chalice and Blood Moon won't always be as free for me as it was that game. It's free again this game, though, assuming that I get a turn 1 that's relevant. I just fetch Swamp and then Island Cycle, and I'm good. I think I am okay with the hand, but not in love with it. I have a fairy that can trade with an early creature like a Goblin Rabblemaster, and I'm immune to Blood Moon after turn 1, and if I do get Blood Mooned turn 1, I just still get an island out of it. Yeah, my opponent has no idea how bad Chalice on 1 is against me. And I think like using resources to play Chalice is perfectly reasonable and a thing that they should be doing given the information that they have, but we have the look behind the screen to know. All right, I don't need all 4 Cavern of Souls at the same time, deck. I appreciate the enthusiasm. but it is slightly misplaced. Trinisphere is fine. Slows me down. I'm gonna think real quick about whether or not I want Island or Island Swamp. I think I want Island Swamp. I have more of a chance of naturally drawing an extra island. I get knocked off of casting a spell in this exact turn cycle. Something like an initiative creature this turn would be rough. Oh, that's fine. I can Faerie Mastermind to help out with that. Like Faerie Mastermind, discourage loot, trade in combat. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with this. I probably don't show this yet. Oh, very uncounterable Faerie Mastermind. We'll just do this at sorcery speed and see if my opponent wants to loot. They do. They had a lot of land. I also have a lot of land, unfortunately. Broadside is horrifying. Now I don't get to block anymore. My opponent just makes a treasure every time and kills one of these 2/2 tokens. That is obviously very, very bad for me. And I'm not going to get to double spell. Dismember is a huge boon. The Fable of the Mirrorbreaker is still a problem, but hopefully one that I can deal with in another turn cycle or two. Get out. So, scariest thing is probably an initiative creature, because like that plus copying it is very damning right now. I'll take some damage. I have great resources. I don't know that I'm going to get to use them before I'm effectively dead, though. Ugh. That's so much value. Sprite's not really good. Not super happy with my situation. I, in fact, probably should just concede now. Hydroblasts aren't getting me out of this with Chalice in play, and I certainly don't have time to Brazen Borrower it out of play. See what this loots. 2 more mana sources. These Fables have been insane for my opponent. My opponent plays that. If they have 1 more mana source, they get to copy it as well. Uh-huh. Oh, do they have a treasure setting in play? Must have had a treasure setting in play. At this point, like, I can bounce this, take 4, rather than being dead. I guess that's good. But I'm not solving the problem, right? And I'm pretty unlikely to top deck myself out of this situation. This is a start. So I dismember the reflection, and then hold up, I guess, this to trade with a 2/2 token. And then I have to draw something that deals with both the Rabble Master and this over the next couple of turns. I think I'm just buried. Yep. Well, I guess instead I could take 1 more damage, go to 4, block this token, keep a creature on board. My opponent started tapping for a removal spell, but then maybe realized that they have Chalice that gets in the way of it. Fiery Confluence. Fuck. Okay, I don't think I want Hercules for Chalice and Trinisphere and such. The Thoughtseize is a little better when I'm on the play. I maybe get rid of 1 Bitterblossom or a Thoughtseize. Classic, I have the Thoughtseize, but not the mana to play it on turn 1. Despite that, my hand's probably a keep. I think it's turn 1 Fae, turn 2 Cycle and Thoughtseize. Force of Negation, pitching Sprite if my opponent plays a lock piece that I have a problem with. Alright. Land, Deuter, go. We've got 3 mana. That is too much value. Let's say no to that. Great. Okay, so now we will go ahead and Island Cycle, grab a black source, play a black source, and hope to punch a meaningful hole in this hand. That's a good hand. We're going to take the Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. Just very easily the best card there. That's a good top deck. Gives my opponent something to do if they flood out. And is working towards Fury actively. That's an okay draw. It's just a little rough in the face of Fiery Confluence, which is going to be a sweeper. It's a sweeper that my opponent can sit on. So, am I getting enough damage out of this by getting 2 damage? I think so. Oh, that's interesting. I now don't untap this. I just hold this up. Or no. My opponent draws a land. Do they just Fury and say Fiery Confluence to go up my face? In which case I hold this up. Oh, that's awkward. I think I hold this up. Send it. A little unsure about that decision. Alright, so there's the land. So it is 3 damage to every creature, so I'm going to lose both of these. And if I play Scion of Oona, it dies, and then Sleep, Cursed, Fairy dies. So we're going to play this thing that's probably going to die to Fury. I will do this at sorcery speed so that I get 1 more point of damage. So I have 4 points per turn. I have the ability to dismember the Fury that my opponent plays out. Another Fiery Confluence would be devastating. 6 mana. Alright, there's the Fury. Yeah, my thing flies, and I have Dismember. Fairy. And I don't think against a mono red deck I have to Dismember at on my own turn for any reason. I'll just wait a minute. A Rabble Master. Fury represents 6 a turn. Rabble Master represents a little bit of damage and then a lot of damage. I think I'm just going to take out the Fury. Pay life on one of these. Cavern of Souls is a black source, but not the best black source for Dismember. I'll take 1. And I think I've probably got this one. Hydroblast is great. Hydroblast covers me from just about everything that could go wrong. And we win that one? And we end up going positive in this league, which is great for a brew like this. Well, so how do we feel about tuning up Steve's deck here? Pretty good. I feel like we captured the spirit of being a fairy deck. Maybe I should have played more of this card. This card is pretty darn cute with Bitterblossom, and gave me some weird game versus Glacial Chasm that was unexpected, but quite good. I do think that in a Orcish Bowmaster world, playing a deck with a bunch of X1 creatures is kind of a bad idea. So, like, this was good for what it was trying to accomplish. I think I like this direction a lot. Again, you can play Faeries, like, you can play a blue-black flash deck. I think going the Opposition Agent, Orcish Bowmasters, Cunning Nightbender, whatever it was, route. And that would result in you having fewer X1s and also being better capable of dealing with opposing Orcish Bowmasters. I'm overall happy with Lorien Revealed as my cantrip of choice in this deck. It did draw 3 multiple times in this league while being pretty consistent early game fixing. So thumbs up there. We didn't end up brainstorm locking ourselves. So that's good. I don't think I have too much else to say here. If you find yourself in need of cards, consider checking out Cool Stuff Inc. and using promo code ThrabenU to save 5% on your next order. And folks, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!